Core strength is very important to develop in fitness, but unfortunately there are a few key misunderstandings that hold some people back. So I want to share 3 key points that I think will really help you once you understand. And the good news is that after you understand them, then core strength will just pretty much never be an issue for you again. And then you can just go on to do a lot of cool stuff and, just be awesome. And the last point is something I learned in my first year of fitness, but it's not really something I hear discussed that much. The first is that we tend to train our core as if it were just our abs, when there's quite a bit more to it than that, and yet a lot of us still default to front-facing things like leg raises, sit-ups, and even crunches because it can help us feel the burn here. And this breaks down into 2 separate but related issues, and the first is actually good news, which is our core is designed to work together. So whatever core exercise you're doing is probably still training your core, and it's very important for it to stabilize so we can move like this and still stay rigid as needed. And we want our core to be strong enough to protect us and stabilize us through a variety of different movement, whether we are lifting ourselves or lifting something else. And this means that we don't usually have to isolate our core training unless we're trying to bodybuild or have a very specific need. And your core has the potential to be very strong. It's designed to be very strong because it needs to maintain enough tension to protect and support one of the most important parts of our bodies, which is our biceps. Of course, right? Very important. No, our spine, right, is essential to many parts of life, and that's why our core is designed to protect it. So weak core, no fun, but a strong core not only can make you better at athletic movement and exercise, but can also help protect your life and quality of living. By the way, that bicep kiss, I once did that in public accidentally. I had this thing where I lean over to my wife sometimes when we're eating in a restaurant and I'll kiss her, and I lean over and I didn't realize that she had a long sleeve on, so I just kissed the only bare skin that I saw, which was my own bicep. So I was like, I love you. And she was like, did you just kiss your own bicep? In my mind, I didn't register that it was weird. I was like, yeah, but in my mind, it was actually yours, but I didn't want to kiss your sleeve, so I just kissed it. Never mind. And the second issue is that a lot of us are chasing the burn when we're doing core exercises, when that's not really what will advance us. I don't know if you can see me, but I decided I wanted to do some leg raises. But I have this rock here. If I were to ask you about this rock, how many times do you think you could curl this rock? Well, it'd probably be hundreds, right? For some of you, it could be thousands. It's basically just a few pounds, almost no weight, and you could do a lot of it. But you would notice, maybe not even 100 reps in, that you would feel the burn. And that is the potential issue with a lot of core exercises. We pursue things like a plank or sit-ups and crunches, which I'm not saying are necessarily bad exercises, especially if that's the level you're at that you need to get stronger to build up. But after you can do hundreds of them, man, if I were to tell you to strengthen any other part of your body and you picked a weight that you could do hundreds of, do you think that would be the best way to get strong? And a lot of people would say, no, not necessarily, yet with our core, we tend to think differently. And I know from experience that this can be a small point of contention for some people because they're like, well, I like doing this, so I don't want to stop doing it. I get it. If you want to do it and whatever you're doing is working as usual, please keep doing it. What I would say instead is perhaps if you want to strengthen your core and you think it's an issue, then try some more difficult exercises. They can be leg raises. We have a progression list on our website and a free online fitness routine and an app that can walk you through that if you want. Or it can just be like a leg raise hold like this if you don't want to move, which is part of the next point. And to be clear, you don't have to do things like flags and elbow levers. They are things that are used in calisthenics, but they take a little bit more time to learn to do, to have the technique to do compared to some other exercises. So if all you care about is this core strength, there are simpler ways to do that. And you don't need something super difficult. Once again, your core is designed to protect your spine and protect you in general. So if you're working too close to your max ability, you might get closer to the risk of injury, which is not good. But after you can do like, say 20 reps of something, you may want to consider moving on to a slightly harder variation. And the third thing is that while there is a focus on movement in core exercises like sit-ups and crunches, one of the most important functions of the core muscles is to resist movement when we pick things up and down, for example. And this breaks up into 2 slightly smaller points and a bonus at the end. And the first is that you're already doing this, probably, if you're training your core, as in you're training your core somewhat with isometrics. Even with things like sit-ups and leg raises, if you put your hand on your belly, you will feel a little bit of movement, but it's not really that much movement compared to how much your abs are capable of. For example, if you try to touch your sternum to your pubic bone, you realize that, wow, you're suddenly moving a lot more. And even during a sit-up, the last part is usually done with hip flexors, for example. Now, if you do want to train your core muscles through some movement and some range of motion, then you can. There are some exercises for that, probably beyond the scope of this particular video. I don't know how much of it I will cover, but I will say for you to try to train relatively gently at first, especially if you're new to this, because once again, our core is responsible for defending a very important part of our body, our spine, our lower back. It's required for a lot of stuff, so be careful. Start super gently, and if in doubt, you probably don't have to do this. While core training is important, there are some ways I would argue it is overrated, which I know sounds like very provocative, but I'll kind of explain it at the end. But first, I will mention the good news, which is that you probably are already training this somewhat. You're already training to resist movement somewhat if you have a workout routine, if you're regularly lifting some moderately heavy things within your ability, of course. If you're doing side planks or if you're doing one-arm carries like this, that is the benefit of only having one kettlebell. I didn't buy the other one, but like, one-arm carry, you're resisting movement a little bit by holding it up like this. And of course, you have the sit-ups, the leg raises, the L-sits maybe, and from that, you're basically getting the front, the sides, and the back. So you might already be doing this, which can be really good. And I want to spend a little bit of extra time emphasizing why this is important, because it might almost feel boring. You might feel like, man, maybe I should do something else. Maybe I should train it through movement. And there is a tendency among some people have the opposite, but for some people to think isometrics or not moving is lesser. Like if you train them to hold this rather than increasing the weight, they might be like, well, no, I want to try moving with it, which is not always bad, but I can see how it's not very motivating to train to resist movement, which again, you're already doing with your workouts. So just keep and continue that. But if this were like 10 times the weight and 500 pounds, it'd be okay, right? It's like, wow, he's standing there with 500 pounds. That's nice. But it wouldn't be nearly as impressive as if someone deadlifted 500 pounds, especially with one arm, right? But it is important because a lot of people injure themselves from their inability to resist movement. So if you're doing an exercise or you get into an accident, hopefully you don't, a lot of the accidents that may happen come from your inability, or I should say less ability than you need to protect yourself in that moment. Like if you need to hold something and it suddenly moves or someone jumps on it, you go, ugh! You know, that sudden force where the load exceeds your capacity, that's when injury happens. So learning to brace yourself, super important. But the good news is that you can get strong with that pretty fast. So if you think of your range of motion as this is your body, you can train this, you can train this, you can go forward, you can go back. If you're only training this, you can really specialize in that and you can increase your ability to hold that weight and resist motion pretty quickly. Isometrics is really good for that, and that leads me into my last bonus point here. And that is that beyond a certain point, you may not need to take core training as seriously as you once did. It is sometimes a little bit overstated, and here's why I think that is. Now, when you're starting off especially, sometimes your ability to brace yourself with your core is a weak point sometimes. So with push-ups, for example, with a lot of people, they can either start with easier variations, but if they start on the ground, you notice some beginners, they have their abs sag a little bit, and that's why some people say, well, supplement a little bit with planks, and then they're like, wow, I can do a lot more pull-ups, or sorry, push-ups, but pull-ups too, because that was their bottleneck at one point. But after a certain point, that is just no longer as true, because our core can get quite strong, maybe faster than some other parts of our body. So you take something that does require a very strong core, so like a very heavy deadlift, imagine that. And it usually isn't the core muscles that are the bottleneck. It sometimes is, but especially after you get more advanced, there's usually other bottlenecks, and I'll give you a hint. Most people can lift more if you give them lifting straps. So one potential bottleneck was their grip. Now, if it was a core, then the straps wouldn't matter as much. So if the straps can help you grip 300 pounds, but your core can only sustain like 200 pounds, then you're going to be able to lift 200 pounds. And of course, with bodyweight stuff, you have things like the human flag and some gymnastics movements, which I don't consider myself an expert on gymnastics, but you talk to them, and from the little bit that I do know, a lot of the bottleneck is upper body, shoulders, things like that, not necessarily the core. It does help to have a strong core that's able to sustain that, and if you don't have that, then definitely build that up, but it's relatively fast compared to grip, shoulders, and some upper body muscles. Those are usually the limiting factor. So by all means, please continue your core training, but I want to kind of give some nuance to the idea, because there are a lot of videos and recommendations where like this is the unlock for you to get very strong. It can be an unlock if that is your bottleneck, but especially as you get more advanced, a lot of relatively advanced people, they level off their core training. It doesn't mean they stop. It means they might prioritize something else. So maybe they want to work on their arms, their biceps, their pushing strength or something, and they maintain the 2 sets of hanging leg raises. Building up eventually to 3 sets of 20 for a lot of people works pretty well. And of course, you want to be more than strong enough to resist whatever movements and whatever thing that you might be doing in your life. And hey, I'm not saying that you have to stop. So if you don't feel like you're limited by your core strength and you enjoy whatever core training you have, by all means, keep doing it. Better safe than sorry, I guess. And you could just have a very swole core. Do we know anyone with just a very swole core. Like that was the thing they specialized in. Like imagine at a bodybuilding contest or something, you see one walk up to the stage and it's like 300-pound heavyweight bodybuilders, and he takes off his shirt and his arms are not that big, right? But the middle of him is just rotund. He's just huge, a lot of width, and they're like, whoa, because they're bodybuilders. Like, bro, you need to lose weight. And he's like, no, I am already 5% body fat. This is all muscle. And you zoom in, it's like he just really built his abs and his side and his back. I like to imagine if that happened, he'd be nicknamed the barrel, because he'd be built like a barrel, and probably not something most of you need to do, and arguably not possible to have that kind of muscle distribution, and you probably shouldn't do it. I say that because there's always one person that's like, Hampton, I will email you, you have given me a new goal in life, I will become the barrel. So I don't recommend doing that. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you can find that helpful. Here's an app if you need help with core training and home workout. Have a beautiful day, my friend. And new chapters on our webtoon.